And here's something I haven't touched on, the exercise component. How bad did you beat your body up? Did you go and run? Okay, well, that doesn't really cause a lot of muscle breakdown generally. Did you do like isolated training, right? You're like isolating your biceps, and a bodybuilding is really effective at this because it causes more muscle tears because you are putting the joint at an inefficient angle and you're stretching the muscle and making it tear. If you're doing these slow movements with high tension, that type of training and like maybe muscle splits like back and biceps, if that's all you hit for 90 minutes, you're gonna break down that muscle more, so the protein generally will go more to use. If you do What's up, everybody? My name's Stefan Kuntz, and welcome to the Everyday Pursuit podcast. All right, there's two categories. You are probably either eating too little protein or you're probably eating too much. Not every single person is eating right where they're supposed to. And after coaching hundreds and hundreds of people, I can tell you that these two categories, the undereater and the overeater of protein, are the two that exist the most often, hands down, 100%, no debate. And it's kind of a weird concept because there's so much information like that tells us how much protein we're supposed to eat. And in 2024, it's actually the easiest thing to hit your protein goal. And I've done a ton of episodes on protein supplementation and should you take protein powder and stuff like that previously. But this is specifically about, does more protein actually equal more gains? And I'm going to go over some systematic reviews, some actual scientific literature, some meta-analysis. If you don't know what those are, basically they take tons and tons of scientific literature and journal and they review tons of them. And they look at like, hey, in average, what is the general consensus? And I want to go over that stuff because we use science-based coaching at Pursuit Health and Performance because our clients deserve the best. And we can't just go off of, oh, this worked for me, or, oh, this worked for this other person. Like, we have to look at the science. But the only thing that I will say about scientific literature is it's kind of done in like lab settings. They do try to control different things, and I'm not going to go into that. But when I got my degree in exercise science, we went through basically how to read peer-reviewed journals and how to look at the abstract and how to look at the causation and effect of things. And I don't want to give you guys a big science lessons, but I kind of nerd out on that stuff a little bit. I do want to look at what the science says, but you can have kind of like your own science experiment when you start coaching. So no, I'm not in a lab. I'm not controlling every little thing, but if you've coached 500, 600, 700 people, you generally know what works, right? Now, I do understand that there's individualism, like genetics play a role into it and how much volume. And I don't always know what my clients are doing specifically at the gym, but I will say that we track as much data as possible. So this is a little bit of my opinion and what I've seen with my body, but also what we see with clients. And we know, because even though we're not doing a scientific experiment, and I'm not going on PubMed or, these different sites and submitting journals, you can kind of back it up with like, hey, from my experience. So don't come at me and be like, oh, let me see. Did you write a journal or a book? No, I haven't. But if you look at our clients' results and our feedback, generally what we do works, right? And that's another thing is if you look at all this scientific literature, and there's a lot out there, you listen to this influencer, you should be looking at, well, who has the most results and what are the clients saying to back this up? And then also, I hope that you take at least my experience for lifting 17 years to it holds some weight because you are your own science experiment, right? Even everything I tell you right now, you don't really know if it's generally going to work for you. It doesn't mean that you should just disregard the information. It's actually super useful and you should apply it, but you don't know. Like some people just work better with a lower protein intake to a certain extent, but let me dive into it. So I want to tell you a little bit of a story. It's really small, and then we'll just dive in because this will make sense. When I first started training, and I've been an athlete my whole life, but when I started weight training when I was about 15 years old, I knew nothing about protein. My parents knew nothing about it, or at least they didn't tell me anything about it. We had protein with dinner because I think that's what we're supposed to do. But if you look at the back of a food label, it's an RDA, your recommended daily allowance. And honestly, it's super outdated. Any sports performance person, any personal trainer will tell you that that label is just a bunch of BS, okay? It holds no weight. It's not accurate. I don't know why they don't. Oh, I kind of know why they don't update it, but that's not what this episode's about. So don't be like, oh, well, my doctor said, or blah, blah. We have to look at what the science says, and then also what the people you want to look like and perform like do. So the problem about the scientific journals of what I was saying before is they might say, hey, you're supposed to eat in one of the articles, and I'll link all these articles. I will cite all the sources. There's 3 articles in the show notes, so you can read for yourself. You probably won't do it, but it's there. So I'm not just throwing it out of left field. One of them basically says that the general consensus is about 0.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, which is insanely low. A kilogram is 2.2 pounds. So it's saying for every 2.2 pounds, you need about a half a gram of protein, which I think is the current RDA, and it's really, really low. I'll just let you know this right now. If you're like, hey, I don't want to listen to the whole episode, I'll just tell you generally, if you consume about 1 gram of protein per pound of lean desired muscle mass, you're probably all right. You'll probably do pretty well in a maintenance, cut, and a bulk. Now, there's more to that, but if you're like, I don't want to listen to this guy, I just want to know how much protein, 1 pound. So you'd be like, well, how do I know what my lean desired body weight is? Well, we'll just do a real life example. I have a client that we're training right now that came in. He's about 5'8". He's about 210 pounds. He should be, okay, he's 5'8", 210. He should be about 170, maybe 180 if he's like stacked at like 15 to 17% body fat, maybe even 165. So we put him, right? He actually came in and he goes, I guess I'm supposed to be eating 220 grams of protein. Nope, that's too much. You should be eating a little bit less, right? You should be eating around 175 to 180 grams of protein, right? Like your desired lean body mass, like at your optimal weight. If you look at your body fat, right? What is that supposed to be? You're not feeding the fat. So if you have 40, 50 pounds of fat to lose, protein doesn't feed that. It feeds the muscle. Okay. So that's the first thing. But going back to the story, my parents didn't teach me anything about nutrition. Now, don't feel bad for me. I hear this a lot. And so, it happens. And I just think they didn't have the information, right? Social media is a great wealth of knowledge. And my dad actually grew up kind of like being fit. He was in the military, not a gym person like me whatsoever, but like he wasn't fat and out of shape. He went to the gym and I think he like took protein, but I never really had like the nutrition talk. It was never really a thing for me. And so I learned a lot of my stuff actually through GNC, even from wrestling. And dude, I've heard this so much. I wrestled for 4 years. My wrestling coach basically taught me nothing about nutrition, which blows my mind because I know that I would have been really a much better wrestler if I would have fueled myself correctly. Part of the reason I know is after my senior year, I didn't make it to state. My best friend Adam made it to state. He was a state champ. And so basically, I ended up training with him, right? Like his training partner. And after districts were over and I got my butt kicked, I ate a ton. I'm like, oh, wrestling season's over. And I was eating and fueling my body with glycogen and protein. And I came back and took him down and smoked him. Never did that in practice. And it was just a wake up call with me where I'm like, wow, my body, and I didn't know until years later, but I'm like, my body just was super underfueled. He's still a better wrestler than me, hands down, but I couldn't perform. And I knew that. I was like, I'm gassing out. Like I kind of knew I wasn't eating enough, mostly for carbs, but also I was on a cut the whole time. And the whole point is my coach didn't teach me anything about protein. So if you're like, I don't really know, why didn't anybody teach me? Even somebody that was in pretty decently high level athletics and in the military, they teach you nothing about nutrition. And the whole industry of like exercise and sports and military, oh, they'll teach you everything you want to know about exercise. Do push-ups, do pull-ups, run. There's nothing about nutrition. Blows my mind, but like that's the truth and it sucks. So I'm here to help you. So I basically learned from going to frickin' GNC when I was in the military and talking to this guy that was Jack. Now, I'm pretty sure you're trying to like have me buy supplements. I mentioned him in other, I don't even know his name, but I mentioned him in other podcast episodes because it was a huge turning point where I felt like I learned a lot. This guy was super knowledgeable. He was also trying to sell me supplements, but in shape. I think he like had his degree in kinesiology, talked to me about protein and stuff. And I just knew that I was supposed to be eating around 1 gram. Like I remember that stuck. And so I got protein powder. I got all these supplements and I just stuck to that rule. And it was crazy because I was eating protein. Like I knew I was eating meat. I was taking the protein shakes, but I didn't really know how much. I even tried the mass gainer. By the way, if you're like skinny and you're a hard gainer and you're like, man, I've tried that too. Mass gainers are garbage. Don't do it. And if you have a specific question, just ask me, like in the comments, and I'll tell you exactly why. I'll go into a long depth. I don't want to waste my time on it, but you'd be better use eating whole foods. And so that's just the general rule I followed, and it worked really, really well. And honestly, I followed that for about 10 years. I did track my macros. I made sure I hit my protein almost every day. Now, it wasn't perfect, but one rule of thumb I also did that you should do is I'm okay to go over my protein, but not other macros, because protein is an anabolic macronutrient. Let's say for right now, I'm eating about 185 grams of protein. If I were to bump that up to 200 every day and change nothing, I probably would see no changes in my body fat. I don't think so. If anything, I actually might see lower body fat. And here's the next piece of education. Generally, it is 1 gram per pound of lean desired body mass, except when you're on a cut. Bet you didn't know that. You might say, well, what do you mean when I'm bulking, I'm supposed to eat more protein? You can, but actually, no. I would say when you're bulking, you should eat more carbohydrates, maybe more fat, but your protein relatively stays the same. And I've tried this. Here's where the Stefan experiment comes through. I have tried this time and time again, and I notice when I increase my protein, when I bulk, like it does make a difference, but the protein's already there. So just to give you an idea about protein, really what protein is, it's amino acids. And amino acids are there, and they're the building blocks of your muscle fibers. So you go to the gym, you break it down, the muscle fibers have little micro tears, you build them back up with amino acids, and protein contains amino acids. That's like the first grade explanation of it. And there are certain amino acids, specifically L-leucine, which is very like anabolic. So it's really meant to like help you grow muscle. There's a lot of essential and non-essential amino acids, which I'm not going to get in too much because I know you probably don't care too much about the science. You just want to know, if I eat more protein, can I get bigger? So here's my answer. Yes and no. If you're on a cut, I always increase my protein to about 1.3 grams per pound of lean body mass, or 1.2. Part of the reason is if I'm supposed to be eating, let's just use a number. If I'm supposed to be eating 3,000 calories a day for my maintenance, which isn't, okay, but let's say that's my maintenance, and I drop to 2,200 calories. That's a big drop. That's 800 calories less. Normal deficits are like 300 to 500 calories. So that big drop, the chances of me going catabolic, which basically means that I could start eating at my muscle, is kind of a lot, right? That's why people sip on like amino acids, or you see the bodybuilders with their big jugs and they drink amino acids. They're just so afraid of losing muscle. Well, why is that important? Well, you don't want to lose muscle, because you losing muscle basically means that you're going to end up slowing your metabolism down. Because how it works is your muscle really is your baseline metabolism, and it influences your BMR. So you don't ever really want to lose muscle, and muscle takes so much longer to build than burning fat takes, right? Like I could lose a few pounds of fat in a week or two. I could fast and get super shredded. You can't just pack on muscle out of nowhere unless you're taking tons of steroids and performance enhancing drugs and tren and D-bol and DECA and all these crazy things test. Like just a natural person, it takes a long time, especially after you've been lifting for like 5 to 10 years. It's just like a freaking so slow. Okay. So it is really, really challenging. So when I cut, I don't want to lose any muscle, and I always increase it 1.1 to 1.3. I always like more. And here's why. Protein helps keep you full. Okay. When you're hungry, like you're like, not like I have a craving, but you're like, my stomach hurts because I need to eat. Protein for sure is going to keep you the most full, the longest, 100%, especially solid animal-based protein, steaks, chicken, stuff like that. Is it going to satisfy your craving? I don't know, right? Like I just had chicken, but like actually what my stomach feels is like, I'm full. Do I wish it was done with like peanut butter or chocolate rice cakes with peanut butter and bananas, which is like one of my favorite snacks? Yes. But at the same time, that's going to spike your blood sugar. It's not really going to keep you too full for too long. And you got to consume a lot more calories of carbohydrates than you do for protein to keep you full. So I always do that on a cut. I make sure I'm a little higher protein. And I know that me overeating on my protein is not going to spill over into fat storage like carbs or fat would. Well, why? Well, you use carbs and fat for energy. Protein, you don't really use for energy. Can you use it for energy for performance? If it's the last thing your body has as a fuel source, sure, but it really is not going to. It actually can convert some of it over to glucose and use it as blood sugar. And I forget the process. I should have wrote it down. I think it's called gluconeogenesis, where it breaks down the protein into carbohydrates. And you really don't want to do that. That's basically into a carb source. You don't want to do that. It's inefficient. And you're robbing from the protein that you were supposed to use to build your muscle. So that's why I'll always increase it. I think beyond that, you don't need to. Now on a bulk, you might say, well, should I on a bulk? Well, let's just do some critical thinking, and then I'm going to go into the studies. When I think about a bulk, and I've done tons of cuts and bulks and my team has worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients in person, online, group, everything you can think of. I've noticed that generally it does help people, but it can kind of hurt people because there's two types of people during a bulk. There's the people that go, well, man, I just can't eat anymore and I can't eat enough to do an effective bulk. More protein actually might not be better for that person because protein keeps you full. And it's really, really challenging for that individual to eat more when they're full. So actually going to like liquid sources of protein, like protein powders, stuff like that, or maybe even like a protein bar, which I'm not a fan of, but like they're like, oh, I could eat that. It's tasty. Whatever gets your calories in, because you need the fuel to grow. You need the materials to build the house, right? Now, if you're somebody that says like, wow, I bulk, but I like doing the dirty bulks and I overeat and I get too fat, then I would actually say for that person, maybe even eating more protein could be beneficial. Well, why? Well, you're an overeater. If you felt full more, would you be less likely to overeat? Hopefully that's not confusing. I would say yes, right? You're full. You're like, I don't want to eat. So again, you're using protein as a tool kind of, right? There is kind of an optimal amount, but for me, I feel like if I can sit there and if I'm an overeater when I bulk, I would actually say just stick to more protein, because the chances of me like overeating and eating junky food is just going to drop down. Okay. So that's my take. And that's what I've noticed. Again, I'm still at 1 to 1.3. That's the fluctuation. That's it. Do I have clients that come to us and they're eating like 2 grams per pound of body weight, not lean desired body weight. I've had people come to me, they're 160, they're eating 250 grams of protein a day. I'm like, bro, how big are you trying to be? I want to get like 180, way over, right? Not only is that going to be hard on your body and your kidneys, and I don't think it's going to have kidney failure, but at the same time, it's just a waste. Like it's a waste of on your body's processes. You can only use amino acids so effectively. And I would say generally the rule of thumb for me, I would say I try to stick to about 60 grams of protein at one time and no more than that. Does that mean your body can't process it? No, it actually will process whatever you get it. But there is some assimilation that happens where your body has to break it down, use the amino acids. And at a certain point, it's law of diminishing returns. Like, cool, more protein doesn't necessarily mean you're going to build more muscle. And here's something I haven't touched on, the exercise component. How bad did you beat your body up? Did you go and run? Okay, well, that doesn't really cause a lot of muscle breakdown generally. Did you do like isolated training, right? You're like isolating your biceps, and a bodybuilding is really effective at this because it causes more muscle tears generally, because you are putting the joint at an inefficient angle and you're stretching the muscle and making it tear, right? If you're doing these slow movements with high tension. So that type of training and like, maybe muscle splits like back and buys, if that's all you hit for 90 minutes, you're going to break down that muscle more. So the protein generally will go more to use. If you do a CrossFit workout, depending on what it is, you actually will probably just need more carbs. It doesn't mean you can't have high protein, but you probably didn't break your muscle down as much. You probably used more glucose, so blood sugar, and glycogen, which is your carb storage within your muscle. Okay. So this title is kind of long from this, this journal, but I'll just read it. It's called The Systematic Review, Meta-Analysis, and Meta-Regression of the Effects of Protein Supplements on Resistance Training, Induced Gains in Muscle Mass and Strength in Healthy Adults. Now, this is data from 49 studies with 1,863 participants, and they basically showed that dietary protein, and I'm reading it, supplements significantly increase changes in your strength in your 1 rep max, reduction in fat mass, free fat mass, increase in muscle size fiber, cross-sectional and mid-femur. So basically they can see like they take a scan and they could actually see like the muscle fiber size, because that's what's happening. You have 2 types of muscle growth, hyperplasia and hypertrophy. And hyperplasia basically just means like more, right? And you can have it with like fat mass. It's just like more muscle fibers. And then hypertrophy is like the actual diameter of the muscle fiber grows. And this is during periods of prolonged resistance training exercise, which they call RTE. Now, here's another one. This is the response of muscle protein synthesis, okay, which is basically you using the amino acids, Mike Tyson there, amino acids, and sitting there and basically using those to recover your muscle, okay? So the response of muscle protein synthesis following whole body resistance exercise is greater following 40 grams than 20 grams of ingested whey protein. That's the title. They literally said, hey, let's see if consuming 40 grams of whey protein, and I would do whey protein isolate if I were you, post-workout, it's faster digesting, less lactose, but I don't know if they use the concentrate. I didn't read too far into it, but probably an isolate. And here's basically the results that they found. You can read it for yourself. Muscle protein synthesis, that's so hard to say, was stimulated to a greater extent following ingestion of 40 grams compared to 20 grams of protein. No duh, right? Most people know that. Now, there's thousands and thousands of studies, probably ones that do 80 and whatever. Eventually, there is a law of diminishing returns. Again, I didn't look at every test subject and their weight and blah, 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 because that has to do with it, right? If you're 220 of pure muscle, or you're like me and I'm 175 pounds of pure muscle, I like to think so. So, you're going to have a different response for sure. That person needs more protein because it also goes off weight. Okay. And how, you also have to think of if somebody's bigger, like just a big ass NFL dude, everything's bigger. His heart's bigger, his kidney, his liver, his digestive tract, like everything's larger. So it just needs more fuel. Like a big truck and a Prius, like they both take gas. Well, maybe not the Prius, a Honda Accord. They both take gas. One is just heavier and has, a bigger engine and more combustion. And so it needs more fuel. That's basically the easiest way to do it. Okay. And here's some action steps. Number one, if you're like, well, how much protein do I really take in? Well, like I said, 1 gram of your lean desired body mass. If you don't know how to do it, I'll give you a really just simple hack. You can do a TDE calculator online. Just Google it. And it's your total daily energy expenditure. It's basically, or TDEE. It's basically like going to say, oh, your age, your sex, your height, your weight. And this kind of how you can set your macros. But I would be careful because just because you set your macros off that, it could be kind of accurate. But again, you are your own scientific experiment. So during this process, you're going to have to kind of move things around and figure out, like, is this working? Do I have to move this? And that's what we do with our clients in our Hero Transformation Program. And this is why we do custom training with your nutrition. You can go and do a TDEE calculator and you could go do it for free and set your macros, but it's what happens after that. But you can go do that. You need to be tracking your protein. You need to be seeing how many protein in. A lot of our clients come to us, and actually the first thing we do is we track calories and protein, not all 3 macros, not your proteins, your carbs, and your fats. For some people, that's the best method, but I will say your protein, your calories is still really good. And then the second thing is you need to eat more protein. Like I guarantee you when you track, you're probably under on your protein. And you might say, no, dude, in the morning, I have a protein shake and a yogurt. And then for the lunch, I have a sandwich, which has no protein in it. And then for dinner, I have a steak. Okay, well, let's see. Let's say you're 185 pounds, like average male. I don't know. I feel like that's average. Okay, cool. So you got 60 grams in the morning. You got 60 grams in the evening, 50 grams probably in your steak, 50 grams. Let's just say 50-50, right? Your steak's probably 50 grams of protein. You said you had what? Eggs and yogurt. I bet you that's like Greek yogurt. I bet it's 50 grams of protein. That's 100. Okay, you're 85 off. I had a sandwich for lunch and a cheese stick and some turkey meat. Okay, that's like 30 grams of protein. You're still 55 grams off. That's pretty significant. That's like almost a third of your daily protein. So I'm telling you, I've seen so many men that come through and especially women, they go, yeah, I had a protein shake. How much was in it? Oh, 18 grams. What did you have for lunch? I wasn't really hungry for lunch. What did you have for dinner? Oh, I had chicken and rice. And I'm like, how much chicken? I had like a 1.5 chicken breast. Okay, so you're at 45 to 50 grams of protein. You need to be eating 130, honey. Oh, I can't eat that much, right? That's part of the reason you don't have gains. That's part of the reason your metabolism's low. That's part of the reason you're not getting the toned look you want because your protein intake is way too low. Like, again, you're only going to the gym and resistance training to break down muscle. The only reason you break down muscle is so you can repair it. The only way to repair it is protein, carbohydrates, water, and sleep. That's it. It's not rocket science, but you have to be taking in enough protein, okay? And in 2024, guys, it's so easy. We get these little Greek yogurt things, 20 grams of protein. They mix in this like probably really crappy quality of protein concentrate. I don't care. 20 grams of protein. Me and my son eat them. They're really easy. They taste good. I mean, they're like $1.20. I eat them in 5 seconds. I swallow the yogurt. Okay. It's so easy. There's no excuse. Eat 2 of those every day. There you go. 40 grams. Boom. And then protein powder, which I've talked about, too easy. So here's the thing. I will say this. You might be like, well, Coach Stefan, it's too hard, man. I can't track my stuff. Track one thing. Track one thing. Track your protein. It's really easy. And I could tell you that every single person we work with, we push this, and most of them do it. Eat the same breakfast every day. Find a high protein breakfast. Start your day off. That's what I do. Hey, my breakfast is 75 grams of protein. So I just know that I'm going to probably hit my protein goal because I got basically half of it done within the first couple hours of the day. And every meal that I have, this is another action item, I make sure I have like 20 to 40 grams of protein. Even if I don't write anything down or input it in the phone or track it in our food app or my Fitness Pal, I just know that I hit my protein goal. And I would rather be a little bit over than a little bit under, for sure. So that works for me. Another thing that I want you guys to think about is when you're trying to like grow, because you probably watch this like, hey, can I gain more muscle? It doesn't matter about getting in more protein at a certain point. It matters about training harder. Okay, so that it could be more sets, more reps, more volume, higher intensity. So progressive overload at some capacity. And then it also matters about doing those health habits that match it. I mean, you do have to have your macros, but more protein doesn't mean you're going to grow, because you also have to break down the muscle. And I see this too. Guys go, more protein, more protein. Well, has your training volume increased? Well, no. Okay, so you're breaking your muscles down at the same level you're doing. So what is the more protein? It's almost like this. You're trying to build a house. You have 10 workers building a house, and the 10 workers are at 100% capacity, right? They're fully worked every day. And you show up to the job site and you're like, I have more materials for you. And they're like, okay, just set them there. And you're like, no, but I have more materials, so you should be able to do more work. They're like, dude, I'm working at 100% capacity. There's only 10 of us. The house needs to be built. We're working as hard as we can. We can't do anything more. But, right, that's like the training. That's the best analogy I have. Cool, more materials, AKA more protein. Yeah, it doesn't do anything. What if you hired 5 more guys? Wow, now we're making a difference. What is the hiring 5 more guys? Breaking down the muscle more, training more, right? Doing more to actually utilize the protein and specifically carbs and fat, because you can't just eat more protein. In order for your muscle to grow, you also have to have carbohydrates, and the carbohydrates will let you actually contract the freaking muscles and go in the gym with intensity, because if you're doing progressive overload, you need to break down the muscle. How are you going to do more sets, more intensity, more volume, more of anything if you have less energy? You can't, right? So the carbs and fats are also super important. So hopefully this episode was helpful, guys. If you have specific questions on protein, what supplements to take, what I kind of do, let me know. I'd love to help you. You can find me on Instagram at Stefan Kunz, STEFANKUNZ_fit. We're also at Instagram at pursuit_HP, or you go to our website, thepursuithp.com. You can fill out a form there to chat with us if you want coaching. We do have, I mean, that's what we do, right? We create programs so you guys don't have to think about this, and we assign you an accountability coach to create a custom program, both exercise and nutrition, and hold you accountable along the way. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe. That'd be awesome. We've been busting these out weekly. We come out with them every single Monday. I also do a lot of shorts on social media. I put a lot of time, money, and effort into this for you guys. I don't run ads. I don't do anything like that. Yes, this is for our program, but it's also to educate you, because we have a lot of people that will never, ever, ever work with us that listen to this, and that makes me happy. But the only way we can get this information out there is if you give us a rating, whether you're listening to this on Spotify, or if you subscribe or share it, like any of those things. It literally takes you 1 second. You just have to click just your thumb, right? That would mean the world to me, because we want to get back to the first responder community. We want to help you guys, and we can't do anything if we're not heard or seen. So I love you guys. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you next time.